I have to respond to a comment on the video on Monday. I have a lot to say. So I'm just going to jump straight into it because there is a lot to cover in this video. This is the comment in pink here that I've highlighted. It's from Exotic Doll. The person is asking, could you please provide your own opinion on buy now, pay later being pushed out to people? If you were poor and you wanted an item, say a basic new car or spa slash hot tub for medical purposes, would you go for the buy now, pay later? Thank you. Now, I'm not going to lie, when I saw this on Monday, it really jumped out to me because I've covered buy now, pay later on the channel previously. But in the context of speaking about it, it was always aimed at younger people. Now, I'm paying attention to my analytics and I realize that there's a lot of you who are 45 plus, all the way over to 65, with a lot of you there. And I'm glad that you're here watching this channel right now. So maybe rightly or wrongly, I assume that Exotic Doll is in the older demographic. And that really made me kind of like sit up and I did a bit of research. I was like, is buy now, pay later really a thing? And then I came across this article right here in The Guardian. And it says here, buy now, pay later use exploding among older Britons, data shows. If you read the first paragraph, young people have fueled its rise, but now the use of buy now, pay later is exploding among older people, with uptake among 55 to 64-year-olds more than doubling in a year, according to UK data. Now, I'm not going to lie, that for me is, well, I wouldn't say surprising, but it's shocking. It's not surprising because given everything that we've spoken about here on this channel, with inflation, cost of living, possible tax increases, uh, income thresholds being frozen, it only serves to do one thing, and that is, from a financial point of view, reduce your disposable income. And the more squeeze you fill in the disposable income element, it lends itself very, very well for the use of buy now, pay later because it's very easily accessible, it's convenient to use, and believe it or not, it plays against our own or takes advantage of our own behavioral psychology and the way we see and spend money for business benefit. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on. Now, I come at this from perhaps a different lens to most people because if you've read my book, The Money Basics: How to Become Your Own Financial Hero, I've got a copy here, but I don't have it ready to show you. I'll put a thing up here on the screen. That was a best-selling book with HarperCollins in 2023. And in that book, I talk about my own story. I have made a ton of mistakes personally. And in the book, I share how I spent 10 years struggling with credit cards, overdrafts, payday loans. And these things, whilst I was using them, I didn't realize I was digging myself a hole. I just thought, it's something that I can use just to get me out of a bit of a hole, not knowing that using it made the hole even worse. I share a ton of my mistakes so that you don't have to make those mistakes yourself. And so when I talk about this, I'm talking about this because I know what it's like to be in that situation. I've been free of debt now for quite some time. But at the same time, I appreciate what it's like to be there. And if this is the only option that is available to you, I think it's worthwhile us having this conversation so that you weigh up all of the options that you have available to you and you pick with the best base of knowledge that you possibly can. So with that, I think it's worthwhile just talking a little bit about how and why buy now, pay later is so attractive. Now, the primary reason is this: when you think about buy now, pay later, what does it fundamentally help you do? It helps you spread the cost. So let's just say, for whatever reason, you've got to buy something, and let's say it's 100 quid, you haven't got the cash for it right there and then. You can spread the payment over, say, 2, maybe 3, or even 4 payments sometimes with buy now, pay later, and you pay 0 interest over that period of time, as long as you don't miss your payment schedules. And that's the most important part. As long as you don't miss the payment schedules. The minute you miss your payment schedules, then you're going to have fees, late fees that start to accrue. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on because trust me, It's not by mistake. It's by design that they've set up the business and these late fees work in the way that they do. Because again, they're using our own behavioral, psychological makeup with how we spend money against us. And I think it's really important that we understand that. Now, buy now, pay later is one option. The other option that people will often go to as well is what if you could get a credit card, for example, right? There's no E in there. That's intentional because I'm trying to abbreviate here, right? So with a credit card, you need a good credit rating to get a decent credit card, okay? And on a credit card, you might be able to pay zero interest if you pay off the full £100 in the month that you spend it or by the statement date, right? You may not necessarily be able to do that. Spreading the cost like you are in buy now, pay later land might be the better fit. Whereas on a credit card, you might not be able to do that. And even if you did, let's just say you spread this over 2 or 3 payments, that means you're making the minimum payment plus extra. And in that territory, you are definitely going to be paying interest on most credit cards. So not only do you have to pass the credit application, the credit rating on the credit card aspect or option that you would use here, if you haven't got a good credit rating, you're going to get a really rubbish card with a high interest rate likely and won't give you that many perks in terms of 0% purchases, so on and so forth. So it makes sense that people are quite drawn to buy now, pay later as something you can use at the checkout. Relatively easy. Hey presto, Bob's your uncle. You're off to the races. You can set it. Okay? Completely get that. Now, it is important to understand how buy now, pay later actually make their money because it is a £6.4 billion industry. This is by design. They're not stupid. These are very clever people who have come up with a product to take advantage of how people think about spending money in the first place. So they make their money in 3 ways. They charge a merchant fee. So the merchant fee is typically between 2 and 4%. The question that people often ask is, why would any merchant pay a 2 to 4% fee on purchases that are already happening? There's a reason for it. And it is shown in all of the research and all of the studies that when you use buy now, pay later, you buy more. It's shown. But you buy more and you spend more at the checkout. Because all of a sudden, you're not just buying this one thing that costs 100 quid. You're not paying 100 quid up front. You're paying the installments, right? So all of a sudden, you've gone from paying 100 quid psychologically to paying maybe 25 quid up front with other installments to follow. Therefore, the science and the data is evidencing that automatically you now start thinking about, oh, I wanted that, so I'm also going to add that on. So you end up buying more. This is why when we look at businesses and why they allow buy now, pay later to be an option at checkout, it's because all the data shows that people end up spending more. Now, is that a good thing? No, it's not. Because ultimately, it's designed so that the money doesn't remain in your pocket. They don't want the money in your pocket. They want the money in their pocket. It's a transfer. It's a transaction. It's commerce. But it's actually a transfer of wealth because your little £20 or £50 or whatever it might be adds to the pockets of the guys who are making millions. I'll come to that in a minute. So late fees, what do they make on late fees? So remember, if you miss your installment schedule here, you immediately incur a late fee. Now, how much do they make in late fees, you might ask? I've got the number written down here. In 2023, they made £249 million in late fee. Now, what is that made up of and how does that work? If you think about the customer base who use buy now, pay later, 53% of people who use buy now, pay later missed their scheduled payment and incurred a late fee in 2023. 53%. £249 million later, ka-ching, thank you very much. So when I say responsibly, using this thing responsibly, you really have to have the financial discipline and the financial structures in place to ensure that you can afford these payments. Now, I want to go back to the question, okay, because the question is really important. The question was, go back here. If I wanted to buy an item, say a basic new car, spa / hot tub for medical purposes, Would I go for buy now, pay later? This is a really, really important question. So coming back over here, I would look at all of the options that are available to me. The way I see buy now, pay later, and the way I think it will add value is if you're buying low ticket items. Okay. If you're buying low ticket items, you know, 1 to maybe 300 quid, maybe even 500 quid, I think you're fine with using buy now, pay later for that. As long as you have the financial discipline and structure in place to make sure that you do not miss your installments. If you miss your installments, you start opening up a can of worms. As long as you're savvy with that, completely fine. There is a place for it. However, if you're buying anything where you're looking at thousands of pounds, 2,000, 3,000, then I think you're better off looking at things like personal loans. Now, I know people will be screaming,
Pete, why would you say use a personal loan?
let me explain. There are different types of debt, okay? And I teach this in my Money Basics program. There are different types of debt. A personal loan is close ended, which means, let's say you took out a loan for £2,000, okay? And let's just say you had a 36-month term on this thing. And during that 36-month term, you're going to pay, I don't know, an extra £1,000 in interest, okay? What you know at the end of this 36-month term is that the bill and the loan is completely and utterly gone. It's satisfied, you've paid it off. That's close ended. At the very, very beginning, you have sight of what your payments are going to be, the interest that you're going to pay. All of that is up front, and you know that it's going to end over a period of time. That is a lot more efficient and conducive to helping you plan financially than perhaps using something like a credit card, for example, where, all right, you will have a structured ability within this because you've got to make the minimum payments. But here's the problem: this is open ended, right? So the card is always going to be available. The balance is always going to be available. There is no end date to the card. So let's say you put £2,000 on this, okay, and you say you're going to spread the payments. You have to be very, very structured. So over 36 months, what does that equate to on a monthly basis? It will come to a specific number. If you're smart and you're being very, very disciplined, you will pay that amount so that after 36 months, it's completely gone. Sounds like a great idea, but in practice, not a lot of people are able to do that. What people often do is they will make the minimum payments, and on this, it might be, I don't know, 80 quid, and they'll continue making the minimum payments. And because they're making the minimum payments, it will only pay the interest. This amount will still be outstanding 2 or 3 years later. I've done it before. I know plenty of people who have done it. And so I think you have to go through a process of elimination. If you're buying something like a small car or you're buying like a hot tub for medical reasons, it's all about how much are you looking to borrow and take on in debt, because you have to get a clear view of how you're going to structure those payments back so that it doesn't impact you from a financial point of view and it's affordable for you. So what I would be doing is perhaps going through a process of elimination. I think personal loan is the easiest way first, but again, with that you need to have a pretty decent credit score. You got to go through an application. Whereas with a buy now, pay later, you don't necessarily have to do that. You can select it at checkout, fill in a few forms, give them a bit of information. Hey, presto, you should be good, right? But you cannot miss your installment payments because you don't want to fall into the position where you're contributing and being a number of those 53% of people who have used it, giving them 249 million quid in profit. This is all by design. I talked about the fact that this is a wealth transfer. You know, if you're using the product, you've got to understand, whilst people detest rich people and wealthy people create things like this to transfer money from your pocket to their pocket. So you have to use it responsibly. And I cannot stress that enough. So yes, you can use it. Please use it responsibly. Me personally, I haven't been in a position where I've had to use these type of things for years now. And that's purely because I practice what I teach. Everything in my book around the 5 key principles, That has helped me build financial security. It's why I wrote the book. It's all there in the book, but it takes time to build. I spent the time to build and do the things in the book that allowed me to actually write the book in the first place. I practice what I preach, I practice what I teach. You may not necessarily be in the same position, but it's really important to have a really methodical way of looking at this systematically, looking at all of the options and using the process of elimination. If you know you can't get one thing, go for the one that you can access that will give you the ability to get what you need. But please make sure that it's something you can afford to do that isn't going to end up with you having more and more in debt. I'll tell you a story just to finish this, okay? In 2022, I did a program on Channel 4. You'll probably be able to find this somewhere on the internet. It's called Secret Spenders Beat the Price Rises. Okay. And in that episode, in that series, there was an episode where we were going to see a couple. I would think it was in Wales. And the woman in the relationship had a huge buy now, pay later issue. Massive. She would go shopping for clothes and all kinds of stuff. And when I looked at their statement, and she didn't know this at the time, but I asked for all of their statements. I went through all their statements. When I looked at their statement, across all of the buy now, pay later transactions, things that she had bought using buy now, pay later, it amassed to £200 a month. When I asked her, she goes, "Oh, it's not that much. It's probably about 50 quid." I'm like, "No, it's £200 a month." And that's the issue with buy now, pay later, because it's easy for people to accrue debt because you don't feel like you're spending money. And like I've already said, these companies are using behavioral psychology in aid of their business. So you have to understand how they position these things and why they position these things in that way so that you, when you're making your decisions, you're not just doing it because, oh, it's easy, it's simple, I can spread the cost, I need this thing. You're thinking about, okay, right, so from a practical point of view, you're going to use it, but how do you make sure that it doesn't overextend you in any way, shape, or form and it doesn't become a massive burden for you? That's my honest opinion. I hope you've enjoyed this. Look, if you do use buy now, pay later, I'd love to hear your thoughts on your experience of using it, good, bad, or ugly. I actually polled people on Instagram as to whether or not they use buy now, pay later. And bearing in mind, my Instagram following is a little younger than here on YouTube. And 62% of people said they'd use buy now, pay later in some way, shape, or form on my Instagram. So this is something that is going to be here to stay, but using it responsibly is going to be the most important thing. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for watching. See you in the video perhaps tomorrow, if not Friday. Cheers.